Good afternoon. Welcome to this episode of Norfolk Community Forum. My name is Kevin Kalkut, the chair of the Norfolk Select Board. And as always, I am joined by our town administrator, Blythe Robinson. How are you doing today, Blythe?
I'm good, Kevin. Nice to see you.
You as well. Thank you. So in Norfolk Community Forum, we try to condense all of the happenings in town between our board and committee meetings and town hall into a short, consumable program so that we can get you all the relevant information about what's going on in town today. So typically we start out with some hot items. And Blythe, would you like to kick us off with some updates on Southwood?
I would. So Southwood Hospital on Dedham Street was purchased by a company called GFI Partners last Friday. They bought it from the Archdiocese, and I think people are aware that that had been in the works, and it was finally culminated last Friday. I would want to remind people that at this point, there are no plans for what that company is going to do with the property, although they came and made a presentation to the town, to the planning board a couple months back. There are no definite plans for it. And in fact, we are looking to meet with them in the coming weeks to find out what their thoughts are. Hopefully they learned a lot about what the town's concerns and interests are from the community forum that we had in January. I think that was very helpful to understand what people's concerns and interests are about the property, and hope that informs GFI about what would be a viable project there. So we're waiting to hear from them. And in the meantime, I would also like to remind people that the zoning that's been in place in this property for a long time is still in place. There's still a deed restriction. So I would suggest that no one needs to be concerned about next steps. We're going to work on those and keep the public informed about it as we learn more.
Thank you, Blythe. And I know that there's a lot of folks who had some concerns about that very preliminary proposal that GFI had brought to the planning board for some feedback. And we had talked about it during that community meeting that was hosted by the planning board. I think that we got some great feedback and some great direction for GFI from that meeting. But it is important to note that those two restrictive factors, there's a current zoning in place that restricts things like the scale of the building to 50,000 square feet or the height of the building to 45 feet, are still in place, as well as the uses. And also in addition to that is the deed restriction you'd mentioned, which limits the uses to healthcare and assisted living. So there are still a number of things in place that we need to change in order for that to be developed. And we really do look forward to trying to find a great project that works well for the ownership and for the residents.
We do. Thank you.
So next we had some COVID updates for the group, correct?
We did. So unfortunately, it's been almost a year since COVID really became a major issue in the United States and in Massachusetts. But as of the last few weeks, things are looking better in Norfolk. We were in the red zone as defined by the state for quite a while, but as of about 3 weeks ago, we went back into the yellow zone. And in the most recent week of reporting, there were just 7 new cases in Norfolk for a total of 877. We're hoping that continues, and we really appreciate everything our residents are doing to stay safe and keep the numbers down. And we're also happy to report that there haven't been new cases at MCI Norfolk Prison in a couple of weeks as well. So what else is going on? And we're slowly working on a reopening. The governor has made some changes into requirements for restaurants and gatherings. And those have resulted in things like our library open for browsing again as of yesterday. There's been a lot of questions and concerns about vaccines and clinics, and we're very well aware of that for our residents. At this point, because the state isn't going to be providing vaccine to small entities, because you need to be able to vaccinate over 750 people a day to be able to have a clinic. And we're located so close to Gillette, it's unlikely that we will be able to have a clinic, but it doesn't mean we don't want to help our residents in every way possible. And so what we've asked people to do and recommending is please reach out to us if you're having trouble getting an appointment or you need help getting to a site near here. we'd be happy to try and work that out for people and suggest that they call the Council on Aging and talk to one of our staff there. They're helping people on a case-by-case basis, and I know they've had some success with that. So please reach out to us if we can help you. We all would like to see more vaccine coming to Massachusetts sooner rather than later. And we know it will get here, but for now, that's our best advice. And hoping everybody stays safe.
Absolutely. And I think it's also worth noting that this morning, Governor Baker announced that educators and teachers are now added to the list as of March 11th to be able to sign up for the vaccine. So great news on that front as well.
There is, yes.
Our next item that we had was the status of our FY22 budget.
So we're right in the thick of planning for that for next year, and we'll take that up at town meeting in May. What I can report at this point, as you know, we're still working on it, is that the picture in Norfolk is brighter than it was this time last year. There was a lot of concern, and we were very thoughtful about how we approved a budget last year, being very unsure about revenue streams and what the effect of a lockdown and all the restrictions was going to have on the economy overall and on our town, our ability to provide services. So we made a lot of adjustments that year, which were responsible, and I think we've all carried on very well. And what we found a year later is some of the changes that we made were necessary, and some of them, the reductions we made didn't necessarily come to be. We're appreciative that tax collections are on track. We've seen quite a push in new building permits as people are, working on their homes, and the state has revenue collections are a little better, and they're able to increase some major grants that we get. So we're feeling more confident that we're going to be able to continue with level services and restore some of the reductions that we had to make last year, particularly in schools. And, we still have a little bit more work to do. I would recommend that people tune into our next couple of select board meetings and the advisory committee meetings. They'll start taking up the budget on March 17th to follow that. But I think we'll be able to do a great job for residents this year and keep the overall budget to a reasonable increase.
Absolutely. Thank you, Blythe. And, one thing everybody keeps asking about is, okay, when is the full day review of the budget going to happen like you guys did last year? Which, I think last year we were in a much different situation. We had 2 new select board members who was their first budget cycle. We had a new town administrator who was the first solo budget cycle. And we had a community that was eager to learn more about the way that things work in terms of executing a budget plan. So in order to be able to accommodate for that, we allocated a full Saturday to going through the full range of every department, just to be able to align with everybody on what these budgets mean, what these departments do. And I think that was a fantastic exercise for that moment in time. This time around, we're going to do something a little bit different. We're not going to dedicate the full day. And our select board meeting last night, we identified that over the course of our next couple of meetings, we're going to take a little bit of a deeper dive into the areas in which we have some notes from the preliminary outline. And that'll be the forum in which we'll be able to really focus on the differences year over year and highlight some of the questions that we have. So like you had said, for those that are interested in tuning into the budget reviews over the course of the next few select board meetings, as well as the upcoming advisory meetings, are the best places to do that.
Yep, absolutely.
The next item we wanted to talk about was our fire station next steps. We found ourselves a committee last night.
We did, and I'm super excited about that. So is Chief Kinney. We had just a wonderful response from 10 residents with with excellent backgrounds that would serve this committee well. And I know it was a tough decision for the board last night to pick just 5 of them to move forward, but you all did that, and we're excited to welcome them. And as you know from the charge that the board had approved, the work of the committee is to get going right away and hire the consultants that are required for a project like this, an owner's project manager to help guide us through the project, and an architect. And within 1 year of their appointment, to analyze the current station and report back to the board on whether the current station can be renovated in some way or it should be replaced. What's the most appropriate next step for the town of Norfolk? So we're going to get them sworn in and seated and off to work.
Absolutely. And I just want to reiterate too, the absolute amazing outpouring of volunteerism that we saw from some of our residents with incredible expertise. I didn't know we had so many civil engineers here in town. It was incredible to see all those people willing to give their time to ensure that this project comes out as well as it possibly can. So it was a difficult decision last night for the board to kind of whittle that down to 5 individuals, but I think we have a great committee and definitely want to join you in thanking everybody for their interest in contributing and volunteering for the town. Our last item that we wanted to talk about today was the annual town meeting warrant.
So it's shaping up. As of today, we have 31 articles, and they're the typical articles about the budget and revolving funds and accepting Chapter 90 money from the state to fix our roads. But there's also some I just like to make sure people, hear a little bit about and look for as they get ready for town meeting. Things that are a little bit different this year. We're working on the animal regulations for the town. We realize those need to be updated to be current with state law. So that's something the board's going to talk about at the next select board meeting on March 16th. The planning board is ready to reintroduce changes to the B1 zoning district for the downtown of Norfolk. And they've given a lot of thought to what's right for the community. And so they're proposing those again. We're also have an article to potentially offer a municipal aggregation program for electricity rates for residents as a way to help people save a little bit of money on what they spend anyway, both residents and businesses. So a little bit different, but I think an excellent program to offer. And I would suggest that again, people tune into advisory committee meeting, because the advisory committee, as everyone knows, will be vetting all of those suggestions and making those recommendations to town meeting. There's also 2 citizen petitions currently on the warrant, one to change a factor of affordable housing and one to sell a small parcel of land that the town acquired through foreclosure many years ago. So I think those are the highlights.
Thanks, Blythe. And, obviously we're talking in a very preliminary term right now because we're not sure if some of these citizen petitions will be coming through. We're not sure what the look and the feel of the B1 zoning changes will look like. If there'll be one article, there'll be multiple articles. But as it stands right now, we're looking at 31 articles for town meeting? Is that correct?
That's correct. If the B1 district was all managed in one article, there'd be 31. But I know the planning board is giving a lot of thought to the best way to structure how to approach all of those. It might be in a couple of articles. We're waiting to see.
Gotcha. Thank you. So looks like we might have a pretty good meeting ahead of us.
Yes.
Well, that does it for the hot items that we had in front of us right now. This is the point in time where we would transition over to our esteemed guest. And today we've invited our DPW director, Blair Crane, to join us. Blair, how are you today?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. So during this segment, we would typically lean on the expertise of our department heads to be able to enlighten some of us with some of the happenings within the department and some of the more relative functions compared to something that's happened in the recent past. At DPW, winter is always an enjoyable season in which we really extend ourselves to cover some of the snow removal and taking care of our roads and whatnot. So we thought that would be great to invite you, Blair, to talk a little bit about those efforts and try to educate the community a little bit on what it takes to get those kinds of things done.
Absolutely, Kevin, and I'm Blythe. Happy to explain everything. Obviously, snow removal in any community is an undertaking that requires a lot of effort and hours. Every storm is different. Anyone who's lived in New England more than 10 minutes knows that that every storm has its ups and downs, and it can be quick or it can last for days. When we, as a DPW, get into pre-storm checks, we start to look at the complexity of a storm. Some are, like I said, very simple and move along quite quickly. Others can take quite a long time. We look at, we check with a meteorologist that we have to see what their thoughts are. Obviously, we have some experience of our own to lean on. We take a look and see whether or not it's going to be an all snow event or an ice event, a combination of both. Each one of those types of storms has its quirks to deal with. From there on, we look at equipment availability. Maybe we have equipment that is currently being repaired that may not be ready for an event, or maybe we're waiting on parts, or any combination thereof. Obviously, we have to look at whether employees are available, as trucks don't drive themselves, so we have to take a look at that. The town of Norfolk also relies on contractors, so we communicate with them to see what their vehicles and their employees, what status they have. And then the all-important inventory of salt and chemicals that we'll need to combat any type of winter event. Sometimes those can be difficult to obtain, so we try to keep a few hundred tons in stock at all times. This winter and the last 6 weeks or so, things have been difficult, so we have certainly gone through a little more than I would like to, but unfortunately, Mother Nature dictates how we transpire through that. So that deals pretty much with the pre-storm piece of it. When we get into, the storm being imminent, when we're within hours or even after it just begins, we again consult with a meteorologist to see if things have changed, to look at the intensity, and again try to judge the duration of a winter event. At that point in time, I will gather with my staff to look at the time of the day. Obviously, there are other factors involved as we look into this. The time of the day can be an important factor on how we look at it. Is it early in the morning, and will it affect school and commuters and buses? Maybe buses won't be able to get out, or maybe there'll be a 2-hour delay. So those decisions need to be made. Is it mid-afternoon? Will it affect the evening commute, or is it in the middle of the night when the majority of the people are home? Certainly, those different times of the day would certainly affect how we would judge our response to any kind of weather event. Then once we get into the storm itself, again, taking the time of day into effect, we try to monitor in real time, and while we're out there, we try to look at the intensity and precipitation, road temperatures, air temperatures, and so on. Again, consulting with radars and our meteorologist. If it looks like it's beginning to snow faster than we may have anticipated, then we take a look at, maybe it's snowing faster than we're capable of dealing with, which certainly has happened even the recent past year. And then at that point, we make decisions such as, maybe neighborhood roads aren't getting plowed as frequently, and we have to switch those vehicles to primary roads for EMS, police, and fire to be able to respond. Even in those particular cases, though, I'd like to note that when that does happen, we do monitor 911, and if there is an EMS call, I don't want residents to think that if there's a foot of snow on the road, then we haven't plowed it, that if there is an emergency, that first responders won't be able to get there. So even in those particular cases, we certainly monitor that, and so that we can respond as well as ambulances, fire trucks, or police cars. But on the other side of that, maybe it's snowing slower than what we had expected. And a lot of times we can treat it with salt and not have to plow at all, which certainly has budget ramifications, and so we certainly look at those pieces throughout any given event. Obviously, trying to make the best decisions possible, both from a budget standpoint as well as a labor standpoint, and then obviously the safety of the public. Once we get into the final piece of the storm, when it looks like the end of the storm is imminent, excuse me, we start to look at plowing roads for the final time. Maybe during a storm, it's possible that we haven't been able to plow all the way to the curb to try to keep roads open and to try to keep traffic moving. So during this final phase, we assess where we are and we try to push snow piles back. Most of the time, residents aren't particularly happy with us at that point because a lot of them have already snowblowed their driveway and have cleaned up to some degree, and we're out there cleaning up and pushing back. And so we certainly don't do that by design, but unfortunately, we have to make the road as safe as possible. So we do push things back, clean up intersections. We look at snow piles for sight lines. Obviously, people coming to intersections, we want to make sure that they can see oncoming traffic and so on, and to make sure, give everything a once over to make sure that road conditions are safe. And to end, how we really process a snow event the next day is really important. After everybody's gone home for a few hours at least, and everyone's had a chance to rest up, we bring everyone in and we have a debriefing where we talk about the areas of town where everybody was during a storm. We look at, did they have issues? Were they pushing snow up in places that maybe their equipment couldn't push any further? Maybe we need to go back out with a larger piece of equipment to deal with those types of issues. And then at that point, they wash their vehicles to look for defects, and so that the maintenance division can go over everything and fix defects. We have a bit of an aging fleet, so that's an important piece of it. They wash them up and we try to get them repaired if any defects are discovered, and get ready for the next event. So there is a cycle there. It can take anywhere from a few days before to a couple of days after before the cycle is complete. And over the past couple of months, it's been pretty exciting around here. So
I think we've had at least twice as much snow so far this year as we had last year, if that's correct.
The data that we looked at this morning was 59.5 inches in the since the first of the year, which is right around the same amount that we had all of last year. So
5 feet. Excellent.
It has been interesting.
So just a couple of things I'm interested in. You once said to me that we try to plow, our goal is to plow every street every 2 hours in an average storm. I'm not exactly sure what an average storm is, but maybe you can help me understand that.
An average storm, I would consider an average storm. Obviously, it depends on the place in the country where you're used to, but an average storm is 1 inch an hour for a total of about 4 inches. It's a moderate snowstorm. Even just recently, we've had snowstorms where it has snowed several inches an hour. Those are the types of storms where things have a tendency to get out of control, where we plow the best we can, but we certainly don't have the equipment to throw at a storm such as that. And a light storm would be something where we don't put plows on at all. Maybe it's going to snow 2 inches over 24 hours. And we've had a couple of those recently. So we would go out, pre-treat roads so that it doesn't stick to the roads, and then and continue to treat roads as the storm continues. So
Okay.
There's a wide variety, but a moderate storm would be the first one I mentioned.
So when we start getting 2 inches an hour, that's the kind of time when you might have to prioritize primary roads from other roads.
Correct. And that's usually when those types of things, those types of storms happen, things get pretty exciting. There's auto accidents, fire and EMS are running around town. So we try to pool our resources a little bit and be a little more reactive to them to make sure that they can get where they need to go. Police, obviously, police response is a part of that. So when it's snowing like that, we really do try to focus more on emergencies than just generally plowing the town.
Of course. How much salt do we go through in a year? How many tons?
That's a bit of a question. That it would depend on the winter. Last winter wasn't terrible at all. The current storage facility we have now holds an estimated 700 to 800 tons. I would say in the average 4-inch storm that we're talking about, we would use, I would say roughly 100 tons, depending on, if it ends in ice. Obviously every storm is a little bit different, so it's really
Sure.
difficult to gauge that.
Okay.
But obviously we if it's really snowing, then we try not to treat the roads throughout the storm, because you end up having to plow it, and salt does you no good in the snowbanks. So we try not to treat in the middle of an event. It's just wasting money at that point. We do like to go out prior to the storm to pre-treat the roads so that the snow and ice will not stick to the pavement. Makes our job easier in the end. But at the end, we try to treat everything once and be methodical about it, be budget conscious. But salt is expensive, and we try not to put it out there. It's not much of a help for the environment either. So,
I like that. So how's it going? How's the staff holding up the equipment? There's been I know there was one storm when you guys were here for over 24 hours straight.
yes, COVID has, is on everybody's mind these days. And my staff is certainly not immune to that. So they've done exceedingly well, I think, at dealing with that and trying to be as safe as possible. I believe that throughout the winter here, these guys understand that in different types of emergencies, there are other towns that will come to help and bail you out. But in the DPW world, when we're busy, so is everybody else. So these guys have been very cognizant of the fact that we have to stick together here, and we're all in it together. So they've done well with that. That being said, we have the last couple of months have been tough. I think everybody is looking forward to some sunnier weather. We've certainly put in a fair share of hours. Guys had to work New Year's Day this year and President's Day. In a couple of years past, they've had to work Christmas Day. So they have certainly, and they do so without fail, and they always pick up the phone. So there's a certain level of dedication there that I certainly commend.
We really appreciate it. I know I'm speaking for.
Because I believe it
Absolutely.
affects, it affects their social calendar, it affects their home life, their spouses, and so there's the dedication. I'm not sure you would find in a lot of different professions. 5 months of the year, every year, these guys put everything on hold. So,
Yep.
Certainly commend.
Well, thank you for all that.
And to echo Blythe, we absolutely do appreciate that. I know that in some cases it's kind of thankless work, because for the 72 miles of the 74 that are well plowed, there might be a mile or two that aren't up to expectations for some individuals, and those are the ones you typically hear most about. But I think looking at it in the bigger picture and identifying the effort that goes into executing what you guys execute each and every storm, we really do appreciate it. To that end, though, I imagine that there are some helpful hints that you might have for residents who have inquiries about mailbox damage, property damage, street parking, things of those nature. Would you mind sharing some of that with us?
Absolutely. So we do, there are, especially with COVID, a lot of people are home, and when they may be at work or doing other things, there is certainly, we certainly do get a lot of feedback from the public, some good, some bad. It helps us stay on our toes and do a better job. With that, I think, overall, I think residents do a pretty good job. The majority of people have lived in New England, and this particular past winter is not their first. We always appreciate when property owners do not plow snow across the roadway. That does happen every year in a few spots throughout town. it makes the things difficult. It's a road hazard for starters, and it does make things difficult when we try to clean up that road after it's frozen, or down the road if we've gone through and plowed through our final time and somebody plows something across the road, we may not even know that there's snow in the roadway until the following day, or until somebody calls it in. So there is a town bylaw, reflecting that sentiment as well, but that certainly would be helpful for us. And one other thing that that a lot of residents do, and I can't say as I blame them wholeheartedly, is they will pull their vehicles out into the street to clean their driveways and whatnot. A lot of times they will clean off their cars where they can walk around them where we've already plowed. But again, we may not know that that's happened, and it does create a hazard in the roadway. So we try to look for the motorist public and try to take care of hazards and make the roads as safe as possible. So with all of those mailboxes will forever be a New England thorn in our side. Every storm is a little bit different. Storms that are in the early fall and late spring have a tendency to be wet, heavy snow. Coastal storms were the same way. Those particular types of storms, with the velocity, a truck going at 20 miles an hour with the velocity of the snow coming off the plow will easily impact a mailbox and tear it apart. It's unfortunate that happens. I do have drivers that try to take that into account and slow down. There are spots in town that are worse than others. So we do try to mitigate that as best as we can, and we do go out afterwards and try to make amends where we can. Property damage and curbing, always a hot button issue as the snow melts, as it has recently. We've had an influx of calls regarding that. Normally those types of repairs happen in April, once we realize that we're through the winter. Once snowbanks recede, we can see what we really have. We will at that point go out and repair asphalt curbing and take care of sod issues where we've had to plow snow up, tree issues, and so on. So it's a little bit of a lengthy process. We try to hold off on that so that we don't have to go out and do it twice. Right around the time we start street sweeping and really get into spring mode. But this time of the year, it's tough to do that because you end up doing parts of town, then you forget parts of town. We try to be methodical and efficient, and try not to spend taxpayer money where we don't need to.
So the message is just wait for it. We'll get there.
Yeah, and I don't, and I'm certainly not against anybody ever calling DPW. I applaud people that do, because we, as Kevin alluded to, there's over 70 miles of roadway. And we don't get to every road every day. So a lot of times something could happen. Residents are certainly our eyes and our ears out there. We may not be able to respond as quickly as residents would like us to, but it's good to have it on the list and to methodically chew away at the problems within our infrastructure network.
Great advice. Thank you.
Yeah, Blair, I mean, on top of the efforts to be able to handle the storms and the safety associated to it, your outreach and your communication has been fantastic this winter. I know there's a lot of people who have called in during odd hours, who have posted onto online forums about questions or concerns they have. And you've been fantastic about getting ahead of them and addressing them in as open and collaborative manner as one could ask for. So we really do appreciate that as well.
Thank you very much for that. We certainly have put some effort through to that. Like you said, the residents certainly have communicate with us, so we like to return the favor.
I would point out that the boss here is out plowing himself. So if he's not Johnny on the spot to Facebook, it's only because he's probably pushing some snow himself.
That is true. I try to keep myself central to the operation. Obviously, vehicles break down. Conditions change. There can be a severe change in conditions between City Mills and Pine Street. just that little bit of geography, a little bit of difference in elevation. So on any given storm, I am in a truck myself. A lot of times I can be found in the center of town, taking pavement temperatures, seeing in which direction somebody may need help, and responding if somebody happens to be broken down. So there's certainly all hands on deck during any kind of weather event here for sure.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, Blair, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for taking us through some of the functions and the intricacies associated to the handling of these storms. I think it's fantastic information for the community and really aligns everybody on what it takes to actually execute these things on a storm-to-storm basis.
Well, thank you for having me, and welcome. I welcome being a guest anytime.
We'll hold you to that. Thank you, Blair.
Thank you.
So, Blair, we typically end these shows with a couple of notes about interesting items coming up in the near future. The first one that we always like to call out is our upcoming select board meetings. We did meet last night with a fairly robust agenda. So we will be working towards our next agenda for our meeting on 3/16. Following that, we did add another meeting for March to be able to capture as much of the budget review as possible before we get into April. And then our third meeting from now will be on April 6th. So those are our next 3 upcoming meetings.
And then after that, we've got town meeting coming up. We did, as you know, voted last night to change the date of town meeting and the location. We're gonna, again, this spring be outdoors on the King Philip High School football field. And we moved the date just a couple days earlier to Saturday, May 8th. So if people want to pencil that on their calendar, that would be great. With a rain date, or if we need a second day of the following Saturday on May 15th. And I think we're targeting a 10 a.m. start, but we still need to talk about that a little bit more.
Right, and as one of our diligent resident attendees noted last night, you know, it is going to be kind of short notice for folks if we have to cancel due to weather on our first date and move it a week later to the next date. What happens if people can't join? Why don't we just move it inside? It's a good point, it's a fair point, but I think that given where we are right now with the pandemic, asking folks to abandon an outdoor town meeting on the football field to pack inside in an auditorium or a gymnasium just isn't fair. For where we are right now. And I think we would actually get less people that way than we would lose with a short notice move to the next week. So unfortunately, we're in a situation where it really is pick your poison, but I think that's the safer bet in terms of the execution of the meeting.
Yes.
The other item that we wanted to note is the advisory board meetings coming up. Advisory board will be going through and doing a full budget review, as well as doing reviews of each of the individual articles for a town meeting. They're going to start their meetings on the 17th, where they'll be reviewing the town budget, DPW, police, and fire. Their next meeting will be the 24th, where they'll be going through the B1 zoning articles. And then their next one will be on the 31st, where they'll be inviting the schools to talk about their budgets.
Yeah, all those meetings will be by Zoom, and they'll be posted as all meetings are on our website. So I'd encourage people to join that way. It's been great to see more people get involved when they can join through technology rather than necessarily coming out to a meeting at night. So.
And the advisory committee does look a little different this year. They have a new chair in Susan Klein, who we congratulate in her new role. And they also have a new member in Jamil Siddiqui, who we welcome to the committee and look forward to his contributions.
That's correct.
All right, Blythe. Well, that does it for the slate of things that we wanted to discuss today. Anything else you'd like to throw out before we cut it off?
No, I think that's terrific. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Blythe. We appreciate you joining and taking everybody through these important items. And thank you, everybody, for watching. And we look forward to speaking to you again soon. Have a great day.